They said Lee Han-seo felt nothing. No grief, no mercy, no love. But the moment a 4-year-old girl with his mother's birthmark looked up at him and whispered, "Are you the man in my drawings?" The most feared man in Korea forgot how to breathe. The blood on Lee Han's shirt wasn't his. It never was. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his 42nd floor penthouse, Seoul blazing beneath him like a city that had learned to shine only because he allowed it. His reflection stared back, sharp jaw, cold eyes, the kind of stillness that made generals nervous. The Busan network confirmed, his Lieutenant Ryun said from the doorway, voice careful. Director Wu was skimming for 2 years. Was, Lee Han said, not a question. Yes, sir. Silence. Lee Han straightened his cufflink, his mother's jade button, reset in gold, and turned from the window. His eyes swept the room the way a surgeon's scalpel sweeps a chest. Precise. Detached. And the architect? He asked quietly. The one they used to root the access breach 4 years ago? Amelia Adeyeze Okoye, Nigerian national. Where is she now? Ryun hesitated. That hesitation cost him. You had one job after the breach, Lee Han said, voice dropping half a degree. Monitor her. Tell me she's monitored. She left Seoul, sir, abruptly. We lost the trail in Lagos. Something moved across Lee Han's face, gone before anyone could name it. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer, removed a single photograph. A woman laughing at something off camera, natural hair, bright eyes. The kind of smile that didn't belong in the world he lived in. He'd kept that photograph for 4 years. He'd never once asked himself why. Find her, he said. Not to punish, just find her. Ryun nodded and disappeared. Lee Han sat alone in the silence of his empire and stared at the photograph of the only person who had ever looked at him like he was worth saving. As he told himself, it was loose ends. He was lying. Before we go further, do you think a man like Lee Han is even capable of love? Drop your answer in the comments. This story might change your mind. Ryun's file landed on Lee Han's desk 48 hours later, thick, heavier than it should have been. Lee Han opened it slowly. Surveillance photos, Lagos, then London. Then his finger stopped. Seoul. Amelia was back. UNESCO heritage contract, 6 weeks. Same firm she'd worked for 4 years ago. He almost smiled at the audacity. Almost. Then he turned the page, and the world stopped. The photograph showed Amelia walking out of a coffee shop on Insadong Street. Natural hair pinned up, head slightly turned, and beside her, gripping her hand with both of hers, a little girl. 4 years old. Maybe just turned. Brown skin, coiled pigtails caught in the afternoon sun, and eyes. Lee Han's breath left his body. Gray, pale, crystalline. His eyes. In 43 years of calculated living, Lee Han-seo had never once lost control of a room. But right now, alone, he gripped the edge of his desk until his knuckles whitened. Sir? Ryun appeared in the doorway. You've seen her name. Zara Adezi. Ryun paused. They registered her surname as SEO. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Lee Han had ever heard. Seo. His name. Amelia had given a child she hid from him. His name. There's something else. Ryun set a second photo down carefully. Make the little girl's left wrist. A small crescent-shaped birthmark. Pale against her brown skin. Lee Han slowly pulled back his sleeve. On his inner forearm, tattooed in black ink over an old scar, the same crescent. His mother's mark. The one his mother had carried. The one he'd inked onto himself the day she died. Identical. Find Amelia, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Today. He didn't go immediately. That surprised even him. Lee Han spent 3 hours reviewing the file, cross-referencing timelines with the cold precision of a man who trusted data over instinct. 4 years ago. The week Amelia disappeared. The dates aligned with devastating accuracy. He'd told himself back then that she'd left because she'd gotten what she needed. Used his access. Used him. Everyone did eventually. Now he sat staring at a crescent birthmark on a 4-year-old's wrist, and wondered if he'd been the greatest fool in Seoul. He arranged a meeting through a shell company. Official. A compliance review with Amelia's firm regarding heritage data protocols. Formal enough that she couldn't refuse. Controlled enough that he could. Control. That was how he handled everything. But when his car pulled up to the Heritage Restoration Building, and he saw Amelia through the lobby glass, her back straight, heels purposeful, same elegant fury he remembered, his hand paused on the door handle. For 4 seconds, Lee Han Seo didn't move. Then he stepped out. The lobby receptionist smiled professionally. Mr. Kwon, Ms. Okoye is expecting you in conference room A. He nodded, walked the corridor. Halfway down, he heard it. A child's voice. High, serious, concentrated. No, the triangle goes here. The square is too heavy for the top. Lee Han stopped walking. Through a glass partition, a little girl sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by geometric puzzle pieces. She was arranging them with unsettling precision for someone her size. Her brow furrowed exactly the way his did when a strategy wasn't aligning. She looked up. Gray eyes met gray eyes. Neither of them moved. Then Zara tilted her head and said flatly, "You have my eyes." Lee Han's chest cracked open. He stood frozen in the corridor. Zara wasn't frightened. That was the thing that undid him. Most grown men flinched under Lee Han's gaze. This 4-year-old was studying him like a puzzle she intended to solve. "You're staring," she said, returning to her shapes. Mama says staring is rude unless you're thinking hard. Are you thinking hard?" "Yes," Lee Han heard himself say. "About what?" He had no answer. Zara held up a triangular piece. "Do you know where this goes?" Slowly, Lee Han crouched to her level. Something in his knees felt strange, like the action required more courage than walking into armed rooms. He studied the puzzle, pointed to the upper left corner. Zara placed it. Perfect fit. She looked at him with something like approval. You're smart," she said simply. "Mama's smart, too. She says smart people see patterns other people miss." "She's right. Do you know my mama?" Before Lee Han could answer, the conference room door swung open. Amelia stepped out and stopped. 4 years collapsed into 3 seconds. Her eyes went from recognition to fury to fear, cycling so fast that only someone who'd studied her face would catch it. Lee Han had studied her face. For 4 years. From a photograph in a drawer. "Zara," Amelia said, her voice controlled steel. "Go get your juice box from my bag." "But I'm doing the—" "Now, baby." Zara gathered her shapes with dignified reluctance and disappeared inside. The corridor shrank. "You weren't supposed to find us," Amelia said quietly. "You gave her my surname," Lee Han replied. Silence hit like a slap. Amelia's jaw tightened. "That's not what you think it means." "Then tell me what it means." He stepped closer. Because I've been staring at a crescent birthmark for 2 hours and I need you to tell me I'm wrong." She didn't tell him he was wrong. Do you think Amelia was right to hide Zara? Or did she steal something from Lee Han he can never get back? Tell us in the comments, because this next part will shake you. They sat in conference room A with the door closed. Zara slept on a small cot in the corner, juice box still in her hand. Amelia spoke first. The data breach 4 years ago wasn't random." Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. "Someone inside your organization used my firm's credentials to route illegal transfers. They chose me deliberately, foreign contractor, temporary visa, easy to frame and disappear." Lee Han's eyes sharpened. "Who?" "Director Wu." She met his gaze. "But he wasn't working alone. The man who hired him wanted you specifically distracted and weakened before your northern expansion. And when I started asking questions, when I got too close to the truth..." She stopped. "They threatened you," Lee Han said quietly. "They told me that if I stayed in Seoul, if I contacted you, if you ever found out I existed..." Her voice fractured slightly. "They would kill the baby." The room went very still. "I was 8 weeks pregnant when I ran." Her eyes were dry. She'd cried this out long ago. "I didn't run because I stopped trusting you. I ran because I trusted you enough to know what you would do if you found out. You would have locked us down, hunted everyone involved, and in that war..." She glanced at Zara's sleeping form. She would have been the casualty. Li Han said nothing for a long time. You protected her, he finally said, from my world. I protected her from the consequences of loving you. Amelia lifted her chin. There's a difference. Li Han looked at his daughter sleeping peacefully, crescent birthmark visible on her small wrist, and felt something he hadn't felt since his mother died. Grief and guilt, tangled together into something that had no name in any language he spoke. Who else knew? He asked. Amelia's eyes flickered. That's the part, she said carefully, that you're not going to like. Ryun had known, not everything, but enough. He'd intercepted the threat against Amelia 4 years ago and made a unilateral decision. Protect her by letting her disappear rather than escalating to Li Han and triggering a war that might kill her. He'd told himself it was strategy. Li Han sat with that information for 3 days. On the 4th day, he returned to Amelia's office. No pretense this time, no shell company, just him. Zara opened the door. She looked at him, then at the paper bag in his hand. What's that? John, he said. Korean pancakes. I didn't know what you liked. Zara considered this with great seriousness. I like sweet things. There's one with red bean. She stepped back and let him in. They sat on the office floor, Li Han in a bespoke suit worth more than most people's rent, while Zara distributed pancakes with ceremonial precision. Amelia watched from the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Your eyes change color when you're sad, Zara told Li Han, studying him openly. They go darker. Like storm clouds. He looked at her. You notice that? I notice everything, she said, matter of fact. Mama says that's because I'm my father's daughter. She paused, head tilting. She talks about you when she thinks I'm sleeping. Amelia closed her eyes. What does she say? Li Han asked. Zara chewed thoughtfully. That you were the scariest person she ever met, but that you brought her tea when she worked late. She looked up at him. Like, scary people don't bring tea. Li Han looked at Amelia across the room. Something unspoken moved between them, old and warm and still alive. No, he said softly. They don't. For the first time in 4 years, Amelia looked at him without armor. It lasted exactly 40 seconds. Then Li Han's phone exploded with alerts. The photographs were already circulating. Someone had captured them through the office glass. Li Han on the floor with Zara, their matching eyes side by side, unmistakable. Within hours, whispers moved through Seoul's underworld like smoke. Li Han Seo has a child, a weakness, a leverage point. Ryan burst in pale-faced. Director Wu's former partner, Chairman Beck, he has the photos. He's already made contact with 2 rival networks. They're framing Amelia as a foreign operative who seduced you for intelligence and produced a child as long-term insurance. Amelia stood. That's insane. It doesn't need to be true, Li Han said, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet. It needs to be believable. He turned to Ryun. Lockdown. Move them both to... No. Amelia's voice cracked like a whip. Absolutely not. Amelia? Don't. She stepped forward, shaking. You don't get to appear after 4 years and start making decisions about our safety. I spent 4 years building a life that kept her safe. A life without you. And the moment you walk in, within days, she's a target. Her voice broke on the last word. I knew this would happen. I knew it. So you'd rather run again? Li Han's composure fractured. Take her back to Lagos, change your names, spend the next 10 years looking over your shoulder? That's the safety you're offering her? It's better than the safety you're offering? The words hit the room like glass breaking. Zara stood in the doorway in her pajamas, eyes wide, juice box clutched to her chest. She looked at Li Han, then at her mother. Are you fighting because of me? She asked. The silence that followed was the most devastating thing either of them had ever experienced. Amelia took Zara back to their apartment. Li Han let her go. He spent that night in his penthouse dismantling Chairman Beck with surgical precision. Leaked financials, territorial violations, Forged evidence traced back to Beck's own servers. By 4 a.m., the formal fraud charges were filed. By dawn, Beck's network was in full damage control. The threat was neutralized. But Lee Han sat in the silence of his victory and felt nothing. He picked up his phone, put it down, picked it up again. He thought about Zara's question. Are you fighting because of me? He thought about his own father, a man who'd built an empire and left nothing but fear as inheritance, who'd loved in the only way he knew, control, possession, walls. Lee Han had sworn he was different. Tonight he wasn't sure. At 6 a.m., a message arrived. From Amelia. She asked about you all night. She wants to know if you're coming back. I don't know what to tell her. He stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed, "Tell her I'm coming, and tell her I'm sorry it took me 4 years." He arrived at their apartment as morning light broke gold over Seoul. Amelia opened the door before he could knock. Her eyes were swollen. She'd been crying. She didn't pretend otherwise. "I'm not asking you to be perfect," she said quietly. "I'm asking you to be present. There's a difference." "I know the difference now," he said. She studied him. "Beck?" "Handled. Your name is clear, officially." He paused. "I also had Ryan reassigned. He made a decision that wasn't his to make." Something shifted in Amelia's expression. "Lee Han, he protected you," Lee Han said. "I know that. I'm not punishing him. I needed him to understand that protecting the people I love is my responsibility." His voice quieted. "Not something I outsource. The people I love." But Amelia heard it. She didn't address it yet, but she heard it. She stepped back from the door. "Zara's been up since 5, she said. "She has approximately 40 questions for you." He almost smiled. "Only 40? She's pacing herself." If this story moved you, drop a heart in the comments and tell us. What does real love look like to you? Is it grand gestures or simply showing up? Because what happens next is exactly that. Zara was sitting cross-legged on the kitchen counter when Lee Han walked in. She looked at him with those storm cloud eyes and said, without preamble, "Are you my father?" The kitchen went quiet. Lee Han pulled out the counter stool, sat down so they were eye level, and said, "Yes." Zara nodded slowly, processing. "Why weren't you here before?" "Because I didn't know about you, and the people who did know made choices they thought would keep you safe." He held her gaze. "They weren't wrong. But I'm here now." "Are you staying?" He glanced at Amelia, who stood in the doorway with her arms wrapped around herself like she was holding her own heart in. "I want to," he said. "But that's not just my decision." Zara looked at her mother. "Mama?" Amelia's eyes glistened. "Come here, baby." Zara climbed down and patted to her mother, who scooped her up in one smooth motion and held her fiercely. Over Zara's shoulder, Amelia looked at Lee Han, really looked at him, and saw what she'd always seen beneath the empire and the ice, a man who wanted desperately to be worth loving. "One condition," Amelia said. "Name it." "You don't build walls around us, no guards at the door, no surveillance, no control disguised as protection." She stroked Zara's hair. "We are not your empire. We are your family. There's a difference." "I know," he said quietly. "I'm learning." Zara lifted her head from her mother's shoulder. She reached out and touched the jade button on Lee Han's cuff, his mother's button, with careful fingers. "It's pretty," she said. "What is it?" "It belonged to your grandmother," Lee Han said, his voice rough at the edges. "She would have—" He stopped, steadied. "She would have loved you very much." Zara unclipped it gently and held it out to him. "You should keep it. But can I see it sometimes?" He took it from her small hand. Well, then, and for the first time and longer than he could remember, Lee Han Seo smiled. A real smile. Small and uncertain and completely unguarded. "Whenever you want," he said. Zara smiled back. She had his eyes and her mother's warmth and the birthmark of a woman she'd never met. And somehow she carried all three like they were always supposed to belong together. 3 months later, Lee Han restructured his operations, sold the violent interests, made himself less feared and more present. Some allies defected. He let them. Because every evening on a video call from Lagos or in person in Seoul, a 4-year-old with storm cloud eyes showed him her drawings. Every single one featured 3 figures: a tall man, a woman with natural hair, and a small girl in the middle holding both their hands. She'd been drawing that picture for a year before she ever met him. She'd always known he was coming. And in the end, through the silence, the secrets, the danger, and the grief, so had he. They said Lee Han-seo felt nothing. They were wrong. He felt everything. He'd just been waiting for someone brave enough to show him where to put it.